Hey guys, welcome to Mad Scientist Barbecue. I'm Jeremy Yoder, and today I'm going to do a test I've never done in this way. We're going to do side by side, prime versus choice versus select. Stick around. I want to thank Reynolds Kitchens Butcher Paper for sponsoring today's video. There's a reason that in Central Texas, they wrap their briskets in butcher paper. It's because it gives you the perfect combination of crust on the outside and tender, juicy meat on the inside. It preserves moisture, and in my opinion, it is the way to go when cooking briskets. If you guys have been watching for a while, you know that I always recommend get the highest quality of meat that you possibly can. And I've gotten the best results by doing that. And so we're really going to find out what the differences are between prime and choice and select. Now, in the past, when I've done prime briskets, always happy. When I've done choice, depending on where it comes from, I'm happy, or, you know, really this is a disappointing brisket. And then select, I've only ever had kind of crummy brisket. So today, I have a Creekstone prime, an Angus choice, and then whatever Walmart has that's select. So we're going to put those side by side. We're going to take a look at each one quickly. Then I'm going to trim them up and season them like I always do with salt and pepper. Then we're going to put them on the smoker and let them cook. By the way, those loud noises are not gunshots. That's construction. I think they're building a house back there. But never fear, I'm not in danger. All right, we have select, choice, prime. We're going to trim these up and season them with just salt and pepper because we want the meat to shine through, and any kinds of differences in flavors that we might find, we want to be able to note those. We don't want to cover it up with a bunch of seasonings. Now, one thing that we're going to use to compare is a cut off of the flat from each one of these to see if there's a difference in the marbling. Now, there's going to be fat in the middle of the point for all of these, but that should give us a good clue as to how much marbling is present. If you don't know, the USDA judges choice or select or prime based on the amount of marbling that's present. And so they have people who go in and they examine the marbling within the meat and they judge it as prime, choice, or select going down in the amount of marbling. So prime has the most, choice has the medium amount, and select has the least. Now these are actually like the three highest grades of beef. There are actually several grades below this, but I've never seen a brisket that's marked anything other than one of these three. So these are the three that I care about. Let's get to trimming. Let me give you some of the details of the cook. First, we're going to start at 190 degrees because that helps build bark and put on smoke flavor, and meat absorbs the most smoke flavor when it's cold, so we want to lay that on now. The pellets that I'm using a 50-50 mix of Knotty Wood almond pellets and Knotty Wood plum pellets. I think the plum has tremendous flavor and the almond really helps the bark, so that's the best combination that I've found, and so that's my favorite. That's what I'm using in here. Also, it's important to note we're going to treat these briskets exactly the same way. Now, if I were just doing a select brisket, I might treat it a little differently. If I were just doing a prime brisket, I might treat it a little bit differently. Because if we start changing things for one brisket versus the other brisket, then it's not really a fair comparison. This is about marbling. This is about the final product. So we want to do it the same way. We're going to rest it the same way. Everything's going to be done identically for all three. Treating them differently might be the subject of a future video, but for this one, we're going to keep it all the same and just see how it shakes out in the end. So 190 for the first probably 3 or 4 hours. We'll check back in then. All right, it's been a little over 4 hours at 190 degrees. It's time to bump up the temperature. We're going to go to 235. And also, since we're doing it on the pellet smoker, I actually got to go take a nap, which was awesome, which I can never do because I had to get up really early to get things started this morning. But the conveniences of pellet smoker life, I could get used to it, but I don't want to. Let's take a look. All right, the briskets are starting to get really good color, so we're going to dial up the temperature and let them finish cooking. And all I had to do was hit a couple buttons and rock and roll and go find something else to do. All right, after a brief rain, it's been about 8 hours of cook time, and so it's time to wrap these up. I don't quite have the bark that I want, so it's extra important that we don't wash it away. So we're going to use Reynolds Kitchens Butcher Paper to make sure that we maintain as much bark as possible. It's been really humid, and in my experience, that kind of inhibits bark formation. And so I think that's probably why I didn't quite get the bark that we wanted. but it's super important that we preserve it, so that's why we're using butcher paper instead of foil. As we're wrapping these briskets, you already know why I love to use butcher paper, but let me commend the Reynolds Kitchens Butcher Paper to you for another reason besides the fact that paper is just a superior way to wrap. This comes with a slide cutter that makes it so much more convenient to cut the paper and get it to the right size, and you're not struggling and fighting against it. Now, the first event I ever did, I was cooking 20 briskets, and I had one of those naked rolls, and I was trying to unroll it and pull it, and it was just a humongous pain. So don't waste your money on those naked rolls. Get one with a slide cutter, the Reynolds Kitchens Butcher Paper, and it's gonna make your life a lot easier. It's gonna make barbecue even more fun. So we've got our select, choice, and prime. Now we just wait for tenderness, and when it's tender, we'll pull it off and let them rest. Okay, I think a couple of these guys are done. Let's just double check. Almost. Really, really close on both of those. So a few more minutes, we'll pull those off. All right, we have our 3 briskets. We have select, choice, and prime. And from initial inspection, the prime, for some reason, has definitely the best bark. It also shrunk the most, which is probably because some of that fat that's in the marbling in the meat has liquefied and dripped out of the smoker. The choice brisket shrunk the second most, and the bark on here is okay. The fat's rendered really well. It's sticking to my gloves. You can probably hear this. So that's really good. The same thing's happening with the prime, but with the select, not really so much. The fat just didn't render as well. And I think this is mainly because with prime briskets, a lot of those fats in there have more unsaturated fatty acids, meaning they melt at a lower temperature. So that's why the fat renders really well on this and maybe not so well on the select. The same principle is true with Wagyu. They have more unsaturated fatty acids in the fat, so it melts while you're holding it in your hand. It's crazy. So I think that's another reason why prime is so juicy and so good. As a matter of fact, the select brisket actually had the biggest fat cap on it. So it's not just total amount of fat that matters, it's the intramuscular marbling that's really important. So to sum that up, the prime and the choice, the fat rendered well. The select, not so much, even though they were cooked the exact same way. So what I'm gonna do to get an idea of juiciness inside is I'm gonna split the point and the flat on all these. We'll get a shot of that, and then I'll cut the point straight down the middle and see what that looks like. So I'm gonna make all those cuts, so it should be 6 cuts, and then we'll show you close-ups of each one. This looks good. This looks about right. Yeah. Still tender. Actually not bad. The fat's rendered better here than I thought it would be. Pretty yellow. Just doesn't have that same stickiness. All right, here we go. Cutting the point right down the middle. I'm curious about this. Legitimately. Fat's rendered okay. The meat looks kind of pale, but overall it looks juicy enough. Here we go, choice. I never had bad luck with choice. Okay, better color on the meat, juicier for sure. Fat's definitely rendered better. Really happy with this one. Then for the choice, let's cut the point right down the middle. Here we go. Definitely juicier. Better color here as well. Really pretty happy with this, if I'm being honest. Yeah, no complaints about that. Now, el primo, the cousin. The meat inside the flat definitely looks juicier. You can squeeze out juice a lot more easily. So that's the benefit of the marbling there. And so let's cut this guy right in half. This one, the color looks better. It looks like it's kind of overcooked, but it doesn't actually look juicier. but I bet if you take a bite, it seems juicier. Now that you've seen exactly how these all look, it's time to examine something a lot more important: the flavor, the texture, and the richness of each one. So I'm gonna cut a piece of each one and taste it and let you know my thoughts. We're gonna start with Select, move on to Choice, and then finish up with Prime. All right, here we go. Good texture, good smoke. All right, so the Select brisket, it's not dry. I mean, it's not as moist as a super quality Prime brisket, that's for sure, but it's not dry. But the thing I noticed most about it is I taste smoke, but the meat itself is kind of flavorless. I don't know if it's because they're feeding the animals a lower quality diet and that's why they end up being Select. And if you're wondering, that was a bite from the point, and so to be fair, I should take a bite of the flat and see how the juiciness is on that. Select brisket flat, here we go. More of the same, again, not dry, just kind of flavorless. I don't know why. I taste smoke, salt, and pepper, but just not a lot of beef flavor. This, compared to some briskets that I've had when I go to low quality barbecue places and try out their food, this is definitely better, but it's not great. I'm not super thrilled about it. Let's move on to Choice. All right, this looks good. The Choice looks definitely juicier. Let's see. So Choice Point. And that's great. Really nice. Juicy, flavorful. You taste the beef, you taste the smoke. Really nice. I have no complaints about that. Very happy. All right, Choice Flat. Let's see. Again, not dry. Really nice. No complaints about this. Could it be juicier? Yeah, but it's still really good the way it is. Okay, here we go. Prime. This is the handsomest looking brisket on the outside, but it didn't really appear too juicy when we sliced into it. But hopefully that means that the juices have distributed themselves really well within the meat. But we're about to find out. When I squeeze this, all of that rendered fat starts oozing out of the muscle. This didn't really happen at all with the Select. It happened a little bit with the Choice, but with this one, the whole outside is wet now. So I expect this to be juicy. Let's find out. Yeah. That's what it's all about. That's just a great bite of barbecue. The rendered fat on that is just like candy. That's why my gloves do this. Man, that's good. All right, we've got to try the flat now. Very impressed. Prime brisket flat. Again, the juiciest, best beef flavor. That's really good. Most concentrated beef flavor too. Before I begin my final thoughts, I want to thank Reynolds Kitchens Butcher Paper again for sponsoring today's video. Buying 3 briskets, especially with brisket prices the way they are, is not cheap, so thank you very much, Reynolds. So, I think that what we've been told is still true. Select, Choice, and Prime, each one, as you move up, gets juicier and juicier because there's more marbling in the meat. But what I didn't expect was the flavor that I got in the actual meat on the Select brisket. It was just really, really bland. And I think also the biggest difference was between Select and Choice. There was a night and day difference in quality. Then if you go to Choice and Prime, there's definitely a difference, but it's not as huge as the chasm between Select and Choice. Other things I noticed, the fat on the Prime brisket rendered better. It produced a better bark, but when we sliced into it, it didn't necessarily look a lot juicier actually it looked less juicy than the Choice and probably even the Select. But when you take a bite, all that rendered fat is still present there, distributed within the muscle fibers, and it's a lot juicier when you actually are eating it than by looking at it. So my conclusion is, looks can be deceiving, but the ultimate test is when you actually take a bite and eat it. So in the future, when I'm buying briskets, if I see Choice, it's probably okay. I'm not gonna worry about it. If I see Select, then I'm gonna do anything I can to get something else. You know, Choice or Prime, you're good to go. With Select, you can still get something that's good. It's gonna be tender, it'll probably be juicy, but it won't have the same flavor or richness that you get in Choice and especially with Prime. And if you've ever cooked Wagyu, you know that you only can eat a few bites of that before you get full because it is so rich. But for me, I'm thinking Prime is that sweet spot where it's rich enough, it's juicy enough, it's fatty enough, but not so much that you can only eat a couple bites. Choice is kind of the same way, not quite as rich, but still incredibly good. And then Select is, if you have to use Select, you can still do it well, but it's just not gonna match up to what you can get with Choice or Prime. So what I've been saying for a long time I think is still true. Get the best quality of meat that you can afford and you're gonna have better results in the end. Now, if this video was helpful to you, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. You can also follow me on Patreon, where you can win smokers in contests, you can win 250 quart Yeti coolers, all kinds of stuff that we give away on Patreon. And then finally, you can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Mad Scientist Barbecue. I'll see you guys next time. Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sounds almost like Velcro. Yeah.